title of the talk which Professor Dr. Basil will be delivering today will be Transformation of Sciences through Kalam Revival.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this talk and the invitation of SSI. It's a pleasure to see you in this place and have this opportunity to discuss some vital problems that are suffered by the Islamic world. And thank you, Dr. Megawati, for the beautiful and eloquent introduction. No, it was well organized, by the way, this time, taking some of the notes from the CV, and that reflects about the person, whether he's specialized or not specialized in physics, because normally people in such a department wouldn't expect that a physicist, a devoted physicist would come and work on such questions. And most of the people I meet, they say, are you from Usuluddin? Which Sharia college you have studied? And I never studied in any Sharia college. Yeah. So, the topic of this talk is about the transformation of science through Kalam Revival, Islamic science, by the way, I mean. Perhaps you notice that in our modern world now, there are many ideas, many proposals, many ideologies conflicting, fighting. At the same time, there are unexpected changes in the Middle East especially, and nobody knows. It could happen anywhere in the Islamic world. I mean to say exactly, during the last 3 years, Iraq and Syria have suffered a lot from fanatic groups who claims to establish the state, Islamic State, doing or implementing Minhaj al-Nubuwah. And I do agree that sometimes there are fingers of mysterious foreign agencies pushing these people or paying them, etc. But then let us face it, all what they have tried to implement you can find in hadith and the ijtihadat, some of the fuqaha during the past 7 centuries. Let us not only blame the others for plotting to destroy the Islam and the Islamic world and distorting the picture of Islam in the West. I agree, yes. Your enemies would try to distort your picture, shatter your picture. But then we have the elements which is contributing to it. And this university, this department also, and specifically, should play their role actually in the next coming years, during the next coming years, to present the proper standpoint, the proper Islamic standpoint, from all the thoughts and sources which has caused such a calamity for Muslims in the world. we should also recognize or pay attention, pay serious attention to contemporary movements now in the Middle East and what they call new mutanawwirin, tanwiriyin. Enlightenment, yes. At a time when Daesh, ISIS, has done all this tragedy, people may accept ideas of these people, of this dua, new dua, taking into consideration the vacuum we are in. We are actually, on the other hand, we are in vacuum. Because our shuyukh do not seem to listen to genuine and sincere calls to rectify the book of the hadith, for example. Book of the hadith, even including Bukhari and Muslim included, contains sometimes items which should be reconsidered. Understanding the Quran properly is well founded in Islam, and we should also rectify tafasir from Israeliyat, for example. There are many Israeliyat. I mean, it's no good, to keep your eyes shut and you say, well, this is Ibn Kathir. It's sacred. We should not give taqdees to things which are not muqaddas. Once we take the non-muqaddas to become muqaddas, we fall in problems. It may cause loss of life of hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, by killing them and say this is muqaddas according to Sheikh Fulan or Sheikh Allan or Mujtahid Fulan. I can have to the fatwa of Fulan, Sheikh al-Islam or Hujjatul Islam or whoever. There is no muqaddas. The muqaddas is the Quran and Muhammad. Muhammad al-Ma'soom. He received revelations from God. And the Quran, because it's the word of God. No question about that. The rest is not muqaddas. Nobody is muqaddas. We should pay respect to them. This is a moral attitude, educational attitude. But we should not stick to all the ijtihadat and consider it muqaddas. If we address our problems properly and deal with it courageously, with courage, following the true steps of the great Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will not fear anything by this. Don't fear. If somebody calls for removing a hadith or for giving, if he gives wrong interpretation of the verse like Nisa, this verse from Ali Imran, for example, I don't mind. Strong. Islam is strong. It's very strong, by the way. And thank God the Quran has been preserved by the order of God. إنا نحن نزلنا الذكر وإنا له وإنا له لحافظون. وإنا له لحافظون. So it's the haymana is the dominance of God which preserve the original source of Islam, which is the Quran. We shouldn't be frightened. Unfortunately, this movement also is targeting or claiming the need for modernization. All these movements which I mentioned I gave examples, are lacking proper methodology and theoretical foundation. I admit that there are some good intentions. Sometimes you face good intentions from peoples who is calling to revival of Islamic thought, renewal of Islamic thought, and they have good intentions. But unfortunately, I found most of them are lacking proper methodology and theoretical foundation. And without having profound theoretical foundation, unfortunately, you cannot continue for long. You can gather 10 million followers on certain slogans, around certain slogans and banners, but you cannot continue to establish a way of life. You cannot. The strategy in reformation, in my opinion now, should take into consideration the following important items. One, we should preserve the basic tenets of Islam. Second, conserve the chief aim of Islam. Islam is rahmah. Islam is a way of life according to God's orders, well stipulated in the Quran and the Hadith, and Sahih al-Hadith. It is well stipulated. And this is all for the benefit of a human being, by the way, if one look at it from the angle or perspective of maqasid. From the maqasid perspective, it is in the favor of a human being and society. We should utilize firm modern knowledge, not any modern knowledge or any modern philosophy or on taking decisions. I mean, in this strategy. And also to keep the balance between matter, soul, and mind. This is one fundamental aspect of Islamic thought, and Islamic thought. I don't like to call it philosophy. It's not philosophy. Is to preserve the balance between, or establish a balance between matter, soul, and the mind. It's very important, and very, very few methodologies and thoughtful systems which enjoy such a property. The other point is to attain high level of spiritual understanding along with scientifically respectable practice. And again, this is also a property of the Islamic thought and Islamic da'wah, to have the spiritual alongside with the scientific or rational. Being spiritual doesn't prevent you from dealing rationally with subjects in your life or in your thought. It doesn't prevent you. You keep being spiritual, and you also can have touches of spiritual touches on your decisions which are taken through rational analysis. Definitely. Morals is, in fact, is originally spiritual. Science cannot provide you with morals. Morals you can take from religion or any spiritual method, any spiritual approach, but not from science. So there are certain limits which we should keep in mind. For example, rationality or rational questions are also limited. We shouldn't expect that we can explain every single word in the Quran, for example, or every single verse in every respect. We can understand, but sometimes you feel the Quran as if each page is layered, maybe 100 layers, 10 or 100, it depends on your sight. But the Quran is always can be viewed as layers. And these layers actually, they don't contradict, but they support. More deeper you go, and this is tadabbur and tafakkur. Tadabbur, tafakkur, not only in the universe, ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك. يتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض, with the material structure here. But then it says أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها. So you can also make tadabbur and tafakkur with the Quran to seek more accurate meanings. And you can do that, by the way, rationally and spiritually. But mind you, spiritually is a bit dangerous in this area because, as we know from the history, it could lead to bataniya. Be careful. You should also know what's the limit of the spiritual, what's the limit of the rational. When you discuss rationally the attributes of God, you should learn, or you should primarily know that your brain has certain limits to visualize things, and therefore you should not go too far in discussing the attributes of the divine like the old mutakallimun did. And they arrived at a very unfortunate conclusions. And they were in unfortunate state of social and religious and political situation, which caused the banning of Kalam under Al-Qadir, Al-Khalifa Al-Abbasi, the Abbasid Khalif Al-Qadir Billah, year 421 after Hijrah. He banned Kalam, all Kalam, and the books of Kalam. Reason, there were a good reason for that. Although I don't agree with his decision, but there were good reasons also. Ration has rational analysis, the brain has limits. Spirit or spiritual approach also has limits. As I told you, be careful, not go too far in dealing with the Quran spiritually, because you may become bataniya. You might try now to give some reflections on the Quran which are not belonging to the meant target. Okay. Now, if one thinks we want to revive or we want to renew our Islamic thought, what can we do? Where should we start? How to do that? I find that ilm al-kalam in general can be revisited, and especially daqiq al-kalam. As from 1989, my interest in Kalam started actually without any previous knowledge or education in Kalam. I started reading the original books of Ash'ari, Al-Juwayni, Al-Baqillani, Qadi Abd Jabbar, Abu Rashid al-Naysaburi, الحسن بن متويه. Obviously, I found from start that these peoples have two kalam. Two kalam. One kalam concerning natural and physical worlds, space, time, motion, atoms, jawhar, arad, weight, velocity. And the other kalam is concerned with divinity, الصفات الإلهية, الجنة والنار, hell and heaven, the resurrection of dead, البعث والنشور, and so on. I found also that Ash'ari calls the kalam on the physical and natural questions, questions of natural philosophy, actually, you can call it, space, time, motion, etc. He called it دقيق الكلام. In his book, مقالات الإسلاميين واختلاف المصلين. He called it clearly دقيق الكلام. Then he, in the مقالات, devotes a section and he called it أما وهذا كلامهم في الجليل. جليل الكلام. In the beginning he said وهذا كلامهم في الدقيق. Also حسن بن متويه mentioned that, قاضي عبد الجبار mentioned دقيق لطيف الكلام. So although some people, even in Sharia schools, are not very familiar with this, and when they say, we know علم الكلام, we don't know something called دقيق. Why you are bringing these terms? I say, first of all, I have not invented these terms. It's already with the pioneers of Kalam. Second, I find it is better to classify and segregate questions of divinity from questions from physical or natural physical questions. If I do that, my life will be easier. My task will be easier. Because then I say, mind you, I am not talking in ilahiyat, in divinity. This is not my cup of tea, as they say. I would be talking in physical and natural properties of things and the world. And that is daqiq al-kalam. Why I choose to do that again? Because, again, for two reasons. One, I am a physicist. So it's my specialization. I have been trained to understand such topics accurately, not superficially, accurately. I've done quantum mechanics, quantum field theory in curved space-time, so I know quantum theory very well, and I know general relativity and relativity theory of Einstein very well. And I have published papers, so nobody can say that I am not specialized in this. I am specialized in this field. I understand it very well, and therefore I can tackle problems in this area. While in divinity I cannot. This is not my specialization. I need to read a lot to be educated, and then perhaps. Although second reason is that the portion of or the section on divinity have caused a lot of problems back in the history, and it was the source of a problem for Al-Qadiri declaration. While Daqiq al-Kalam, all sects of Muslims, factions, they agree on Daqiq al-Kalam. Ash'ariyya and Mu'tazila agree 90% on Daqiq al-Kalam. Ash'ariyya and Mu'tazila. They have differences on the subject or topic of causality. The Ash'ariyya believes that causality, both agree on denying causal determinism But they acknowledge, by the way, causal relationship. And this is also one of the things which we need to correct in the writings of our modern era. Many people's claims, we read in Egyptian, especially the Egyptian contemporary philosophers and authors, they say, متكلمون denied causality. This is not correct. متكلمون didn't deny causality, they denied causal determinism. And I will come to this in short. But they acknowledge causal relationship. According to Ash'ariyya, there are two types of causal relationships. اقتران and مستقر العادة. اقتران conjunction. مستقر العادة is the what they call custom or habit sometimes. According to Mu'tazila, there are four types of causal relationships. اقتران مستقر العادة, same as Ash'ari, but they add تولد and اعتماد. تولد and اعتماد. And this makes the Mu'tazili consideration broader. It doesn't conflict. But the Ash'ari was a bit reserved. They have reservation on tawallud and i'timad. They say this may mean that matter, the innate matter, has inherent ability طبع, to act. And that may cause problem. Also, in دقيق الكلام, Ash'ari do not agree on the concept of vacuum with Mu'tazila. Mu'tazila consider the vacuum شيء. Ash'ari say vacuum is nothing. ليس بشيء. ليس بشيء. This is a very delicate problem, and in fact, this vacuum one can do very good MSc thesis in this on this topic, and on the question of causality, by the way, and the difference between Ash'ari and Mu'tazila. One can do a very good PhD thesis. Very good PhD thesis can be done, but he has to take it from physical and Kalam point of view. I mean, it's not only. In any case, during my study for about 5 years, I was studying the books of, not reading the books of Kalam. I could spot that they have 5 basic principles. These principles are, first, temporality. They say or claim or assume, if you like, they try to prove it, of course, the assumption, that the world has a beginning. Muhdath. The world is muhdath, has a beginning, has been created, and everything in the world is muhdath. Second, and by the way, it's muhdath not in time, but with time. This point has been clarified by Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahmatullahi alayhi, في كتاب تهافت الفلاسفة. He stresses that the world is muhdath with time, space and time, both were created with the universe. Not that the universe was created in time. If you say in time, then there were unknown extended time before the creation. And then the question comes why it was chosen at this time specifically. No, there is no choice. Time began with the universe. And this goes well with the theory of general relativity, of course. The second principle is atomism. متكلمون devised a theory of atomic nature. Everything in nature is atomic. Matter, motion, time, space, everything. Energy, heat. Of course, they didn't have the concept energy, they have heat, etc. Smell is atomized. Perhaps you also read nowadays, or in some books, writings, that it most probably the Muslim mutakallimun, Islamic mutakallimun, has borrowed this atomism from the Greek, because the Greek has a theory of atomism. They have, Democritus suggested that the universe is atomic. But mind you, the Islamic atom is completely different from the Greek atom. I don't say that myself, but Shlomo Pins, the Jewish, originally Spanish scholar, wrote a book in 1936 called Islamic Atomism, Studies in Islamic Atomism. Recently it's published a few years ago, not a few years, 1998 it was translated into English. But already in 1948 it was translated by an Egyptian scholar into Arabic. مذهب الذرة عند المسلمين. It's a very good book. In that book, pages and pages are devoted to discuss the origin of Islamic atom. And Pins look for the origin in the Greek first, and then he goes to the Hindu philosophies. And he declares the verdict. Islamic atom has no origin in the Greek, has no origin in the Hindu. It is new, novel idea. Why? In short, in both the Greek and Hindu, the atom is one piece, one element. Only one element. Second, it is materialistic. It's the smallest non-divisible part of matter. If you divide anything into two pieces, or you crush this glass, and crush it, mill it, you will reach one non-divisible part. That is the Democritus atom. When you come to Islamic atom, the case is not like that. The atom is composed of jawhar, essence, and arad. You can say arad, emergent accident, or emergent property rather. Emergent property. The jawhar is an abstract entity. Originally it's abstract entity. Harry Wolfson devotes 40 pages in his book, The Philosophy of the Kalam. Harry Wolfson is a Harvard scholar. He published a book, 900 and something pages, 940 pages or so, titled The Philosophy of the Kalam. And in that book, 40 pages are devoted to discuss the Islamic atom. He was puzzled, the man, this Wolfson, with the problem that original mutakallimun, the pioneering mutakallimun, says that, especially the Mu'tazilite, that our atom has no magnitude, magnitudeless. So he says, how come it's magnitudeless? And if you read in Wolfson, you will see these words. I was puzzled too when I read it. I said, I never came across that the atom, Islamic atom, is magnitudeless. And now Wolfson is telling me, of course I read Wolfson after I read all the books of, available books of Kalam. Is he mistaken? No. Then I found there is a common mistake. The Western authors, they call the Jawhar al-Fard or Jawhar atom. The Jawhar is not atom. Jawhar plus an emergent property. The Jawhar is an abstract. It's magnitudeless. So when you go to the original books of the pioneers, you see that they say the Jawhar is magnitudeless. They don't say the atom. The atom is two things, Jawhar plus Arad. The Jawhar will not materialize, will not occupy a place or a space. There is a little bit difference, by the way, between two. Unless it acquires the Arad. Arad, what's Arad? Arad is any property. Dimension is Arad. Smell is Arad. Color is Arad. In our modern terminology, mass, charge is Arad, etc. Motion is Arad also. Unless the Jawhar is occupied by Arad, by the emergent property. It doesn't form an atom, it doesn't materialize, it remains as an abstract. Also they assume that the Arad is emergent, ever-changing property. الأعراض لا تبقى على حالها زمانين. The Arad or accident or emergent property will not stand two instances. It is under continuous recreation. Why they assume that? In fact, they found that such an assumption is very important to, for their principle of recreation, that the whole world is under the dominance of God, Almighty God, and to realize the concept of Qayyum. Because God in Islam, the God of Muslims, is Qayyum. It's not the God of Aristotle, who created the universe and then resigned. God did not, by the way, according to the proper Islamic understanding, implant properties in matter or in things. He didn't. He actually creating the properties or recreating the properties of things through recreating the Arad. The Jawhar is permanent, immutable, does not change. And it is one and the same for all objects. It is only the Arad which will change. And that will make, for example, water is water, cotton is cotton, wood is wood. The Arad. This is the original idea. There are some mutakallimun who has different idea, of course. Yes. But this is the more scientific idea, actually, which can be articulated under this title. So they say, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum. To be qayyum, he should be active in the universe every moment. How could this happen? They suggested that properties of matter, properties of things are under continuous recreation. And this is a novel and very important idea, as we'll see. They found that this will lead, well, in nature there are laws. If you throw something falls. Certainly, this is a law of nature. If you throw cotton into the fire, it will burn. Do it 10 times, 100 times, it will burn. But then, is it a must? Is these laws of nature, are these laws of nature a must? No, it cannot comply with the Islamic understanding of the presence, dominance of God if you say it is a must. What else then? We have to assume, and that is 1,000 years ago, remember. We have to assume that events in the world are not deterministic, are indeterministic. As you see, in fact, mutakallimun had their source in the Quran. When they thought of atomism, they had in mind وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا. So they said, if it is أَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا, the world is countable. To be countable, we have to adopt the idea of non-divisibility. Perhaps they have picked up this idea of non-divisibility from somewhere else, but not the idea of the atom, by the way. I feel they have picked it from the Quran, actually, because in the Quran it says, and it's already in their writing, that the verse وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا tells you that the world is countable, and you have to therefore think of the non-divisible part. And later they went into Jawhar and Arad and detailed. When it comes to recreation, or they say Allahu Qayyum. To be Qayyum, it has to recreate. The things has to be recreated. And consequently, because Allahu Fa'ilun Mukhtar, Allah has the full choice to do. Therefore, laws in the nature must not be deterministic, but indeterministic. That is to say, this, if I leave it, it will fall. But there is non-zero probability that in one event, among maybe 100 billion events, that it will not fall. I do allow for such a possibility. The world, therefore, is contingent. Contingent, not necessary. And here the difference between necessity and contingency. The fifth principle was space and time. Mutakallimun stress that space cannot exist without time, and time cannot exist without space. Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, in his book Al-Fisal fi al-Milal wal-Nihal, he clearly states that the space and time, according to philosophers, is completely different from space and time according to the Muslims, in that the philosophical space and time are absolute, while it's not like that. He says, وَهِيَ لَيْسَةُ كَذَلِكَ عِنْدَنَا. Space and time. What لَيْسَ كَذَلِكَ? Because it is relative, actually, according to the Muslim. You can not define time without a reference. You cannot define space without a reference. Again, why? Because the universe is not eternal, according to Muslims, while it is eternal, according to the philosophers. So philosophers accept absolute space and absolute time. A Muslim cannot accept absolute space, because time has a beginning. Space has a beginning. these are the 5 principles. I find that these 5 principles are rival, completely in contradiction with other 5 principles in Greek philosophy, which is eternity, continuity, just to compare. Eternity against temporality, continuity against atomism, determinism against indeterminism, no concept of recreation, but creation once. And God is the prime mover, as I said, created everything and left no need, redundant. Space and time are absolute in Greek philosophy. So you see, clear cut. Now, as I have already mentioned that problems were created with Jalil al-Kalam. If we need to revise Jalil al-Kalam, we should take into consideration the history. Otherwise, we will be chewing an old gum. In my opinion, the new Jalil al-Kalam, if we are revising, because we are here, perhaps people are also very much interested in knowing what we can do. First of all, I say why we do need Jalil al-Kalam. Won't it be something which will cause conflicts among people? No. Jalil al-Kalam is needed also to solve social problems, political problems, even economic problems. We don't need to discuss divinity as they were doing, attributes of the divine in thousands of pages. Mabhath al-Sifat, it's called Mabhath al-Sifat, could be 10 pages in the new. Why 10 pages? Well, because it's stated in the Quran. What the Quran says, we take it as at face value in this respect. We don't need to interpret actually. God is Sami', Sami', Alim, Alim, Qadir, Qadir. That's it. We know what's Qadir, Qadir. We don't need even to discuss whether he has a hand or fingers or not, etc. We don't need to discuss. We take it at face value. In my opinion, that's my opinion. Please excuse me, because there are people who think no, that perhaps it's important to discuss this, to be more convinced with the divine. The best way you convince yourself with God, with Allah, is to believe in Allah. Simple. Taslim. I believe that proper Islamic belief is obtained by taslim. وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Rationale will not do much in this corner. Rationale and rational analysis will do perhaps and is needed when you tackle problems of life, but not problems of divinity or visualizing divinity. You don't need that. If you go on that, you may have problems more than you can achieve success. So we need to lay the foundations of Usul al-Din, Aqidah and Sharia in a better, perhaps in a better way. But always we have to make use of the past achievements of the fuqaha. Also, we need Jalil al-Kalam to assess the act of the people and society and to design upon new trends of activities of individual and society. Here comes the role of science, you see. The role of modern science in this respect is great. Why? Because modern science enjoys the property of verification and falsifiability. But we have to know that science has its own limits, by the way. Own limits. It's not open always. And we have to know that science changes. For instance, the 5 principles which I mentioned of Daqiq al-Kalam would not have been accepted by physicists or scientists before 1900 AD. If you come to any scientist and say, is the world temporal or eternal? He will say eternal. Say, the world is continuous or atomic? He will say continuous. But after 1900 AD, after the discovery of quantum theory and relativity theory by Einstein, the scenery completely changed. Completely. From the Greek philosophical view to the Kalam Islamic view. Modern physics supports the 5 principles of Kalam, no doubt. By the way, I have found some people saying, oh, Dr. Tai, you have devised these 5 principles. It's not originally in Kalam, but you have tried to, formulate them to agree with modern physics. I say no. Musa bin Maymun al-Qurtubi existed 1,000 years ago. And his book, Dalalatul Ha'irin, he lists 12 principles. 12. What I have done is collect them and reduce them into 5. Because I found there are some principles of Ibn Maymun are in common. So it's correct, I have articulated, but not deviated from the original content. My 5 principles can be written in 12 categories or 12 principles, 12 doctrines. Okay, if you like, take the 12 doctrines of Musa bin Maymun and compare it with modern physics. What is science? Science is the approach to obtain some knowledge about man and the world. And the source is nature and the mind. Science cannot provide us with full understanding of man. This is beyond the capacity of science. Science can elevate our understanding of religion, though. Can elevate our understanding of religion. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. Correct? So it's not difficult to see that even in the Quran. On the other hand, what's religion? Religion, in my understanding, is a divine mercy given to help human being utilize his mind and nature for his happiness and prosperity. Source is the Quran and authentic hadith. Religion cannot provide us with full information about nature, about, physics of nature, but can direct us to how to discover nature. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. Understanding the Quran in reply to those who are calling for reinterpreting the Quran, etc., could be, but then what are the bases? First of all, we should agree that the Quran is the sum of absolute knowledge and guidance, because it is Kalamullah. Second, it contains the basis of Aqidah and Sharia. Third, contains signs of for self-authentication. It means the Quran contains scientific signs. What they call ijaz, by the way, it's not ijaz, it's signs, isharat, which shows you that this is not written by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is the word of God, indeed the word of God. It addresses, the Quran addresses cosmological topics, and the method of understanding is Arabic language, clarity, simplicity, and authentic modern science. So when we want to write a new interpretation of the Quran, we should take into consideration these basic things. Role of the Hadith. Hadith is guidance for rituals and understanding Islam in every respect. Preservation also of history of Islam, because in most cases Hadith, as you well know, you know better than me, has munasabat al-Hadith. And this haythiyat or munasaba, the occasion, the condition, the requirement, why it was said, preserves you a lot of history of Islam. We have the problem of authentication, yes, whether hadith is sahih or not sahih, the rawi, ruwat, narrator are adil or majruh, jarh wa ta'dil. We can always revise these books, even the books of jarh and ta'dil can be revised, no problem. But we should work according to a system, not in chaos like the people who are, I mentioned, are the people, the modernists are calling for. They are calling to revise the Islamic thought, but in chaos, to cause another chaos. Then there is also the problem of misunderstanding, which stems from the question of authentication. In my opinion, the solution is new narrators authentication. We should go back and na'mal jarh wa ta'dil. Not necessarily who is not majruh in the past is majruh. Is not majruh. Not majruh in the past could be majruh now. Could be. In my opinion, for example, when a rawi narrator says, the Prophet Muhammad said, salawatu rabbi alayhi, he said, 1 second he said, and third, I am not sure whether he mentioned the third or not. This hadith should be cancelled. The Rawi himself is telling us that he is not sure. So you skip it. Not necessary. Majruh. He forgets. Even if he is Sahabi. No matter. But sometimes he said, ما أدري لا أدري ما قصد بالميل. For example, حديث تدنو الشمس من الأرض يوم القيامة حتى تكون كمقدار ميل. قال الراوي لا أدري ما الميل، أهوى الكحل الذي تكتحل به العين أم مسافة الأرض. This is no problem, because it's a matter he is trying to explain to us what is meal. You don't need that. You stop at تقترب الشمس من الأرض حتى تكون كمقدار ميل. Full stop. He's not مجروح in this case. But when he says ما أدري قال الثالثة أم لم يقل الثالثة, what's that? with the new Kalam, we can align our act to be in accordance with the proper teachings of Islam. We can organize our society in accordance with the modern Islamic ruling, in my opinion. And we can get in conformity with the rest of the world, by the way, because we are following a scientific approach. This is the important thing. This is the new thing. Finally, we can take decisions on complicated social, economic, and political issues following a scientific that complies with the requirements of Islam. I have put here some quotations from the book, but you have already, many people have the book concerning this item. I don't need to read these quotations. I will leave it on the screen. You can read. Thank you very much indeed. I hope I have conveyed a message somehow. You do not know unless you introduce another assumption. Yeah.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much, Professor. My question is, you mentioned about how Einstein's contribution has actually shifted the paradigm of how you do physics. Right?
Correct. Completely. Yeah.
So this is where, and the quality of such contribution is one that resonates with the Kalam, the 5 things.
That's right.
Okay? So I have several questions based on that premise. First is there any possibility of change in law of physics?
Yeah.
In the future, that shift from relativity theory and quantum theory to something else?
Yeah.
Is there any possibility of that? That is one. The other one is, actually in your book, since you have physics, you come from physics and hard sciences, so the examples here is a lot on that. From that background. Now, actually, from my understanding on human sciences, there is this more emphasis about ethics in science. Okay, there is thing. But then again, I think we can have such quantum leap, shift, a paradigm shift, because actually in Western sciences, we are reason-based.
Reason-based, yes.
Rationality in our decision-making process.
Correct.
But to me, and my friend here, Dr. Nizam, we believe that I think there can be such a shift, paradigm shift, if we go from mind-based science to heart-based science. Because in heart-based science, you can actually see the application of the daqiq kalam, continual recreation of the self, with qab and bast, and indeterminism. These aspects of principle of kalam can be seen more under the avenue of heart-based science rather than mental or mind-based science. And this resonates also with the future of science, because we are talking in economics, for instance. There are avenues in behavioral economics talking about compassion, sympathy, and all this seems to be language of the heart rather than language of the mind.
Yeah, I got the idea. I have some, this morning we were discussing with Dr. Amran, by the way, this point, indirectly when you talked about the soul. I think it's the same question. Okay, thank you for your question. As far as the first question is concerned, yes, we do expect. Science is open. And by the way, for the audience also, there is a difference between laws of nature and laws of physics. Laws of nature are the phenomena. The phenomena. They need a driver. They cannot do by themselves. They are indeterministic. Events in nature, like solar eclipse, as I said, or burning a cotton. It's a law of nature, falling body. But these laws, all these laws, without specifying any explanation and interpretation, are immutable, but they are indeterministic. So they can't do on their own anything. laws of physics, which he mentions, good, your proper name, laws of physics, are the theories we put, are our imagination, our description of the phenomena, and this changed. Newton described gravity in a way, 250, in a way that everybody believed that this is the sacred interpretation. No change. This is, all the planets are moving according to Newton's law, and when they calculate, they find it gives a perfect result. So they thought that these laws are the laws of God, by the way. They are not the laws of God. They are not the laws of God. That these laws are our laws. Our description, our mind tell us. Because Einstein came 250 years later and told us that the concept of action at a distance, Newtonian gravity is not correct in shape, in concept, and in mathematical formulation. Both are not correct. And he proposed a new theory, general relativity, which gives you new concepts. Instead of action at a distance, you have curved space-time now. Why gravity exists? It exists because the space-time is curved, and also new calculations, new numbers. Of course, when you apply the Einstein gravity law to the solar system, it will give you the same result, nearly, practically the same result as you obtained from Newton. Correct? This is because gravity is weak. But when you go to neutron star or white dwarf, where gravity is very, very strong, neutron star, Newton laws will not give you the proper result, the correct result you obtain in observation, but Einstein law will give you you see the point? So Newtonian gravity is a special case of Einstein's theory. Now you're asking me whether there will be another theory, more general even. Of course. There has to be another theory of gravity which can explain things which are not explainable now. Now physics has problems. There are many problems unexplainable. And we expect that, for example, at a very, very small distances, you need to marry gravity with quantum mechanics. And these two theories cannot be merged into one theory. Why? Because one of them is linear and the other is non-linear. This is the basic reason, actually, the very basic reason. Gravity theory, according to Einstein, is an nonlinear theory, while quantum mechanics is a linear theory. And you cannot use the techniques of quantum mechanics like perturbation theory in gravity, in Einsteinian gravity. You may use it in Newtonian gravity, but not in Einsteinian. Superposition principle does not apply to Einstein gravity. And that is why it's stumbling block, actually, a stumbling block. But we still, we are confident that in coming time there will be a new theory, new laws of physics, as you said. Yeah. As for the second question, yes, I agree. There has to be development of Kalam and Daqiq al-Kalam to cover these topics. I agree with you. But mind you, I am not sure whether we can, with this approach, obtain quantitative results. I think we can obtain qualitative results, but not sure, I say, because I have not experienced doing it. But I will try, by the way. I hope I can have the time and the energy to generate something like that. It will be very important for for humanistics
Religious sciences.
and religious sciences too. You are right, yes. Yeah, thank you.
I see two more questions. Yes.
My question is that, what do you think, according to Kalam, what could be the true picture of cosmology? It is based on standard model of cosmology, based on Big Bang theory or string cosmology. The second question is that, we see in our physical universe that every creature has its own timeline. Every creature has own timeline.
In life, you mean?
Yeah, in life.
Mm.
And space-time continuum.
Yeah.
Big Bang theory, and the modern scientists are saying that Big Bang, after Big Bang only space is expansive. Space
Yes,
expanded.
that's right.
Not the time itself. Time is for counting the event. As Aristotle, it is before and after the event. What I'm saying, if Big Bang is a part of space, then who prescribes the timeline of that Big Bang? If Big Bang is the truth and time is created, there are two questions in mind.
Yes. First of all, the standard Big Bang theory is not free of loopholes or problems. It's actually full of problems. It was a scenario which was suggested by George Gamow, the Russian American scientist. To answer the question, Gamow wanted to answer the question, why we have in the universe 76% hydrogen, nearly 24%, 23% helium, and only 1% in other 90 elements, natural elements. Why these ratios? And he suggested the scenario which was called by Fred Hoyle the Big Bang theory. Fred Hoyle had a steady state theory, and when the Big Bang was suggested, or when Gamow suggested his scenario for the development of the universe, in fact, Hoyle was joking when he said this is a Big Bang theory, but it went the name, you know. The name was taken, otherwise he was joking. The Big Bang, I cannot tell you whether it will change, in which direction it will change, but I can assure you that it will change. I cannot tell you which direction because there are many proposals now. One correction, important correction for the standard Big Bang model was, as you perhaps know, the inflation theory. Inflation theory says that the universe passed during a period, a very short period, of very fast expansion, much faster than the light, you see. So this was called inflation. Again, inflation theory is having problems now, not very convincing. If you ask me about my own contributions in this field, since I've been working on the creation of the universe, I do have my own model, by the way, which is based on quantum effects, or what we call quantum back reaction. We have a model, published paper, or papers, several papers I have published in this field, which proposes a model, a new model for the universe. This model, unfortunately, has a property which cosmologists do not like, which is continuous creation of matter and energy, continuous addition of energy and matter. And because the steady state theory contained continuous creation of matter and energy and failed to interpret some astrophysical observations. So cosmologists and physicists in general, whenever they hear continuous creation of matter, they don't like, and they ignore the theory. Although my model suggests continuous creation of matter proportional to the radius of the universe, in Hoyle's theory it's proportional to the radius cube, to the volume of the universe. There's a big difference between the rate of creation. My rate is very, very low, very low. You know, so it goes unnoticed, by the way. Otherwise, my model is free from all the standard model problems. From the horizon problem, from the flatness problem. I have the universe, flat universe in my, because it has critical density, yeah, and it's no singularity also. I don't have a cosmic singularity, yes, singularity free universe. But nevertheless, this paper was published years ago. I didn't find reflections on it. I didn't find much. There were a few citations, but it's not that important. Yeah. What was the second? What was there were?
Below the Planck era, the linear and non-linear theories of
Yes.
quantum gravity, what
Yeah.
is predicting string theory would be one of them. So what about the string cosmology?
String cosmology, I am not sure whether the string cosmology can give us any prediction. This is the difficulty, you know. Until this moment, I know of no prediction by string theory, verifiable prediction by string theory. Perhaps there are predictions which are at very, very high energies, 10 to the power 19 GeV or so, and that is far from our technological experimental capability now. It needs maybe 50 years or more to reach that level. Yes, sorry.
Sure, the question
Akram.
you just mentioned about string theory.
Yes.
In this theory, they mentioned that there are 11 dimensions.
And 26 and 32. There are hierarchy of theories.
So one of them is 11 dimensions.
Yes, that's right. The basic, that was the basic theory.
They say that we are living in 4 dimensions.
Correct.
And above us, there are 7 dimensions.
Mm.
When I was reading the basic theory, that when they say that above us there are 7 dimensions, I remember the verse of Quran.
فوقكم سبع طرائق.
So this طرائق,
Yeah.
can be considered as a dimension?
Could be. But to theorize such a proposal, you need to define what are طرائق, you know. When I come to the Quran interpretation, scientific interpretation of the Quran, I rather be cautious and conservative. First, I have to define what is طرائق. Second, I would compare whether it could be or share the meaning of a string or dimension, not necessarily string, dimension. Can I consider the طرائق, each طريق as a dimension? Again, I am not sure, because a dimension is a concept that is necessary to define a position, of things. This is the dimension. So we have 3 dimensions now, and I say this point, the end of this, has this طول, the length, width, and height, compared to the reference point, which I may take the corner there or the corner there. You have to define also the reference. So if you can do that, perhaps you can understand it this way. Yes, there. Yeah.
My name is Muhammad Qutub, PhD student from Australia. Jazakumullah khairan for your very informative talk. My first question is, you worked on Einstein's static model of the universe.
That's right.
So my first question is, knowing that it was an expanding universe based on Hubble's experiment,
That's
why
right.
you chose
Hubble
the static
observation.
model, and I think your colleague then extrapolated some of the results
Yeah.
to the expanding
My
universe.
student, actually, Usama, extended my model to the dynamical case.
So the question is why you focus on the static universe when you know already we have an expanding universe. The second question is, you talked about how your model of the universe is free of the singularity, but at the same time, it seems that you were trying to explain point zero by saying that conservation of energy is valid at all times except at point zero.
Correct.
Therefore, it's almost as if you are maybe helping atheists to say exactly we can go from nothing to something. So how do we understand that in the context of creationism?
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that you mentioned the Casimir effect and the Casimir force and how we go from zero to such an astounding amount of energy in the Big Bang.
Yeah. Two very good questions. The first one, reason is technical. If you do not consider, if you consider us an expanding universe, in theory, until now, by the way, you cannot define vacuum. The vacuum state will be impossible to define because there will be no vacuum. In an expanding universe, you cannot define the state zero. Zero, I mean state, quantum state, the vacuum. And this is well-known problems. There were about 10 or 15 articles published by Unruh, Larry Ford, Paul Davies, John Stewart Dowker during the first half of the 70s. Leonard Parker, who proved that there will be a particle creation. And Unruh proved that if you move with any acceleration, there will be particle creation. Particle creation means no vacuum state. Second, equations in a dynamic universe, the Einstein field equation, etc., will be time dependent. It will be cumbersome. We will have more terms. So since we have the problem of vacuum, that was a very good excuse to ignore now this dynamical state and consider a static universe. Nobody would say how you define the vacuum. It's static. I can define the vacuum state with full confidence. Moreover, I get rid of d by dt's. Many d by dt's disappear from my mathematical formulation. And I better get the result easier. That was first question. Second was about the
Coming from point zero.
yeah, the zero. Actually, according to the static calculation, the universe was created not from zero radius, but from a given radius, very small. It's below blank, or blank, transblankian value, 10 to the power minus 33 centimeter, minus 35 meter. That was the size of the universe. But mind you, when Usama added what we call a motor, see, because Usama, the model which was extended by Usama, he didn't go back and consider expanding universe as such. No. He considered the expanding universe being snapshots of many static universes. You see the point? So he didn't have to fall in the problem of defining the vacuum. The vacuum remains well defined in this case. because I'm taking snapshots. Each universe, each moment, the universe is in a state of static. In fact, I borrowed this idea from Kalam, from Daqiq al-Kalam. In Daqiq al-Kalam, the motion is not as defined in physics now, covering distance during a given speed. Speed is not distance divided by time, duration of time. No, because they have the distance quantized and time quantized. So they said the object is faster when it follows a trajectory with less points, stationary points. So they view the motion as bits and pieces, you know. And the trajectory, which contains more sakanat, more stationary points, is slower. The less the number of sakanat, the faster is the body. Therefore, a mutakallim, when he looks on, for example, let us put ourselves in this position, a mutakallim, and he looks at my hand, he says, this is not a continuous motion. What? Maybe a billion, maybe 100,000 billion. Never mind. Still sliced, quantized. So Usama, I told him, you just don't get into the problem of defining vacuum, a quantum vacuum in a dynamical universe. You just take the Kalam proposal that it is sakanat. Sakanat means stationary points. And that is why he say, yeah, you mean I need to put a motor to the universe rather than observing it as if it is working naturally. It's not working. The last point which you said, who created this first in the first place? Yeah, correct. Here comes the question, the necessity of a creator. In opposite conclusion to Hawking's, no creator is needed. Here, my theory naturally requires in the end a creator who has curved the space-time, given it the initial finite curvature, not infinite curvature. Because if finite curvature means singularity, I have finite curvature. But there should be some agency that gave the universe. You know, in his book, Stephen Hawking, The Grand Design, made a big, impression and fuss, you can say. He always says on TV and interviews, he says, I have found that the universe needs no creator. Quantum vacuum can be converted, now I am answering your question too, can be converted spontaneously into real matter and energy in the presence of gravity. I said to Hawking himself, if quantum vacuum or vacuum needs no creator because it's nothing, it needs no creator. It needs no creator. What about gravity? Who brought the gravity? Gravity needs a creator. So it's self-defeating argument. Because if you remove gravity, quantum vacuum will never go spontaneously created. There is one big lecture in Australia delivered by Lawrence Krauss. And in that lecture, he repeats the same thing. So I wrote him, the email is in my laptop. You can see. I wrote to Lawrence Krauss, an email. I told him, what are your references that quantum fluctuation can just pop in and become converted from vacuum to non-vacuum? He referred me to Alan Guth 1983 or so papers during the early 80s. And I said, but this is not very authentic. Speculations. You shouldn't present it on the stage to 3,000 spectators, audience, 3,000 lay people, of course. He was presenting it as if it is an experimental fact. It's not. This is cheating. You should tell them these are only speculations, unproven, unverified speculation. Vacuum cannot go into non-vacuum except, yes, if there is a field of a strong gravitational field, yes, in that case, nothing can become something. But if he was saying that, no, we don't need the gravity. No, you need gravity. You need gravity. Pardon? The quantum vacuum is virtual particle-antiparticle pair.
Can't they use the argument of the Casimir effect?
Exactly, but the Casimir effect needs curvature. Curvature or equal gravity. I mean, to lay people we say gravity, but in fact, to be more accurate, you shouldn't say gravity. You should say curved space-time, curved background.
So Krauss in his book, A Universe from Nothing,
Yes,
used this argument of virtual particles.
he is using the virtual I am not saying that there is no virtual part, but I say that there should be an external field of force to convert the virtual quantum vacuum into real particles.
He's quoting Richard Feynman.
It's
Richard Feynman.
Feynman, I don't know whether he has done something like that.
The theory of positron.
Yeah.
He predicted these things. That
Yeah, but you need in that. Oh, if you go to the positron-electron pair, you need energy. Again, external field, electromagnetic field in that case. As an intense electric field or magnetic field can also convert virtual particles into real particles. Who brought the electromagnetic field?
Last question, Prof.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Amilah. I'm from Department of Auxiliary and Computer. Maybe I am the only person who will ask about Kalam, humanities. Okay. I consider myself in two scopes that are related. First is I belong to the Kalam, maybe you consider it all Kalam, and I agree with you 90% of what you say, but we have some reservation of because I believe that the Kalam must be revisited in order for us to understand the importance unto the Kalam days. The second is about ethics because, and I learned a lot from you. I saw the internet, I saw watch your YouTube, and in fact I share with my students your article on Daqiqul Kalam. This is to boost their interest more in Kalam because they tend to see that Usuluddin and Kalam is not interesting. So, what is your opinion in associating Mu'tazilites with the liberalism in the modern days?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. We have to be selective sometimes. But I myself cannot do without the Mu'tazila. If I do without them, I will lose a huge, important legacy, actually. Very important.
On the kick,
Huh?
الكلام.
On دقيق mainly. لا, Jalil, no. Jalil, I am not sure because as I told you, I haven't studied the Jalil yet to the extent that I can take verdict or decisions. But on the daqiq especially, I need the Mu'tazilas. As I told you, for example, causality. It broadens the scope by defining 4 causal relationships. But as regard to the problems you are having, you don't have to go to any Mu'tazili. You should select those knowledgeable and great scholars like Abd Jabbar al-Hamadani, like Abu Rashid al-Naysaburi, his students, Al-Hassan ibn Mataweh. Also, he has books, good books in daqiq and in these matters, and you can feel safe at all. You don't have a problem with خلق الأفعال, for example. You have to take it from the point that it defines the responsibility.
It's true.
That's what they meant when they say الإنسان خالق لأفعاله. They meant the insan is responsible for what he's doing. That's why he has to be punished if he is doing wrong, and he has to be rewarded if he's doing good. They don't mean that that the insan is himself is a creator. He's no creator. They know that. Abd Jabbar believes in the 5 principles, including, by the way, the probabilistic nature. But what the modernists, what they write about Mu'tazila, and they consider them liberal, etc., because of this point. That this insan, the human being, is responsible for his act. But they put it in a framework, in the frame or in the wording, that the insan is a creator himself. Insan is rival to God. Mu'tazila never said that. Mu'tazila never. And there is one more thing. The Mu'tazila took the question of divine attributes to be majaz. Yes. The unfortunate bit of information here that the rest of the Muslims, especially the Ash'ari, misunderstood again, in my opinion, majaz in general, not majaz of Mu'tazila. They misunderstood majaz in general. I have been in several discussions with contemporary Ash'arites, and they immediately, when you say majaz, it means does not exist. Majaz, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist or not truthful. It exists, but majaz is to tell in a way not directly expressing the meaning maybe, but indirectly. That is majaz. And we use majaz in our life, in our language, in many cases, majaz. Even if you sense of humor is also majaz. For example, sense of humor. I make a joke with you, pointing to something, or just alluding to certain thing. It's majaz. It's a way of majaz. So in my opinion, whether it was like that originally or not, in their conflict, we should formulate it like this in order to avoid any future problems. We should not be so restrictive and go into the details of one Mu'tazili who was perhaps not well informed. There are some Mu'tazilis, there are some Ash'aris who are not well informed, especially when it comes to Kalam. That is why Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahmatullah alayh wrote the book إلجام العوام عن علم الكلام. إلجام العوام, perhaps you know this book. The book says, the title, that the laymen should keep quiet, should shut up actually. إلجام العوام عن علم الكلام, because this is not the kind of discourse that they should contribute to. The lay people. Lay people cannot contribute to علم الكلام. إلجام العوام عن علم الكلام. Unfortunately, again, from this title, some people thought that Al-Ghazali is against Kalam. He is not against Kalam. He was trying to rectify Kalam from the wrong sayings of the laymen. Because some laymen, by the way, started writing books in Kalam at that time. You know, especially in the time of Ma'mun and the time of Mu'tasim. The government was looking for those mutakallim who proves himself mutakallim. They pick him up and make him minister, wazir, or they give him. So some laymen try to write in Kalam and speak in Kalam, show themselves, and we are ready now to become minister. Yeah, and they pay them money, of course, ata. They used to allocate ata to all those who are working in Kalam at the time of Ma'mun and Mu'tasim. Later it was removed, they were removed from ata. So it's a benefit. It's a business. So Al-Ghazali said, well, these people should stop.
Political Islam.
Hujjatul Islam. Wallahi, Hujjatul Islam and Shaykh al-Islam, Abu Hamid, rahmatullah alayhi, I like him. I like him because he's a genius. Abu Hamid, genius, real genius. Genius over thousands of years, on a scale of thousands of years. He talked about symmetry and the role of breaking symmetry in creation of the universe in his book, a topic which has been discussed only 30 years ago. Breaking symmetry. Really. Tahafut al-Falasifa. Please read it if you can read Arabic, I guess. In Tahafut al-Falasifa, it talks about in the maqalat, the eternity of the universe. مسألة قدم العالم.
Prof, can we seek permission to end this?
Please. Yes.
You know,
Yeah, I have taken too much time.
I said that we have to, end this very stimulating, session. But alhamdulillah, we have to
just 2 hours, just complete.
So, as a token of our appreciation for sharing your knowledge and expertise, our head is Dr. Ismail would like to give a token of appreciation.
Thank you very much indeed. My pleasure to be here and to see you and